Reddit, the strangest thing just happened to me. What's an extremely unusual or unexplainable small event that has occurred in your life? I was shooting rubber bands at my cat one day a while back, and he was having fun. I was down to one rubber band, shot it at him, and it whizzed off. I hadn't kept my eye on it, so I had no idea where it went. Well, I didn't want to have a rubber band on the ground in case the dogs ate it or something, so I looked for it for about 5 minutes, my cat just watching me. At that point I walked up to my cat and asked, "Do you know where the rubber band went?" Immediately he stood up, walked over to the couch, and dragged the rubber band out, where it had been caught in one of the weird corners I couldn't see looking under it. He was very prompt about it. My family has owned 2 cats over many years, both have died now though. Both were male, and I always strongly opposed castrating them. Male solidarity? That meant that they had to leave the house to do their business. One time, the cat was out for like a week. We were kind of getting worried. One day, when searching for him, I came across a stray I had seen hanging out with our cat many times. So I said, "Have you seen our cat's name lately? He's been missing for a week now. Tell him to come home if you could." The stray looks at me while I speak, stands up and goes into a basement hole. Apartment buildings here have those. Soviet structures and all. A minute or so later, our cat pops out and follows me home with the stray observing us from the hole. We kept feeding the stray after that for quite a while, until he disappeared one day. I once had a pregnant Siamese cat who had her babies one day while I was at work. When I got home and asked her, "Where are your babies?" she led me outside the house and down the block, meowing at me when I would stop following her cause I thought she was just being a stupid cat and trolling me. Anyway, I continued a few blocks away and down a ravine, until she stopped in front of a random house. A minute or so later a man came out of the house asking if I was looking for the kittens. I picked them up and took them home with me. It was the weirdest thing. I will never forget it. My cat Boots when I was growing up was a pro-level mouser. He must have caught dozens over the years. Once I was watching TV in my living room and a mouse ran across the floor and under the couch. "Boots!" I called. "Mouse." He came sauntering into the room and looked at me. "It's under the couch," I said. "When I pick up the couch, get it." He walked over and sat down, then looked up at me again. "Ready, go." I picked up one side of the couch and he immediately dug underneath it, then came back out with the mouse in his jaws and looked at me. "Good kitty," I said. I reached down and he placed the still living mouse in my hand. I went to take it outside and he meowed at me. I gave the mouse back and he dispatched it, then carried it over to the door, and looked at me. I let him outside. He took the mouse to the corner of the yard, dropped it, and came back to me for pets. Awesome cat. I've told this story a couple of times on here. It's nothing supernatural, but it is pretty scary and it remains unexplained to me, although I have an idea of what happened. Anyway, years ago, I used to play Xbox Live with a great group of online friends. We would play long into the night and on one night it ended up being just me and 2 of my friends. They were roommates, so they played on 2 separate accounts. Around like 2 or 3 a.m., they said they heard a loud noise, so they went to check it out. I continued to goof around in our private game, Need for Speed, Underground 2, waited about an hour for them to come back, but they never did. I figured they just forgot they had left me, and just never turned their Xbox off. Their accounts were offline the next time I logged in and they never logged in again. I'm fairly certain they were murdered in a botched robbery. One time in high school calculus class, my teacher had a little game for extra credit. The game was to guess the area under a curve just by looking at it. We didn't get to see the equation, only the actual curve. My teacher put the curves up on the projector, and we have to write out answers down. Whoever was closest to the actual value got 1 point. Also, this was before we learned integrals, so I wasn't even able to use that to figure out the answer. Anyway, I had been up the entire night before and I was extremely tired, almost in a waking trance. I really didn't have the willpower or motivation to play my teacher's stupid game. Anyways, the first curve comes up. I just write down some bullshit answer. Wasn't even trying. Got it right. I was surprised, but I knew it was just dumb luck. Second curve comes up. And I do the same thing, just take a dumb guess. I nail it again. Third curve comes up, and this is where it gets weird. For some reason I decided to write down a bunch of decimals. Like 3.7492 or something like that. I hold up my answer and I get it right again. Down to 4 decimal places. Purely just a guess. At this point I was almost scared. I had no idea how I was doing this. I wasn't even good at math. I was just blindly guessing. This happens again and again and the entire class is convinced that I'm either cheating, autistic, or a wizard. I believe I got something like 10 answers in a row. Many of them down to 3 or 4 decimal places. After that the teacher was just too freaked out and just gave me a bunch of bonus points on the next test. The story of my lucky streak spread around school and by the end of the day I was getting weird looks in the hallway. After that day I never was able to do anything like that again. It almost scares me to think of that day. I work in a lab where I often have to measure out small 1-gram quantities of organic compounds which come in a dry white powder form. I use a scale that is accurate to the milligram. When I am getting close to the quantity I want, exactly 1 gram for example, I am often able to pick out an exact amount from the container that will get the scale to read 1.001. This happens way too often to be coincidence. I think my brain must be performing a calculation that I'm not totally aware of. Perhaps your brain is particularly good at subconsciously integrating curves. I used to always sleep on my trampoline when I was younger. I loved it. One morning I woke up in an uncomfortable position, not weird as you always roll to center of tramp. I had a noose around my neck. It was a really old creepy rope. One you'd see in an old western, and the rope was not long at all after the noose. Maybe like 6 inches. Like I was being hung and someone cut me down. Never figured it out. I went to stay over at a friend's place last year when his parents went out of town. There were 6 of us there and I was the only one who didn't drink or smoke weed, strict teetotaler here. Anyway, when we get there, new house, our friend informs us that the place is haunted and freaky stuff had been happening. His parents even hired a few Hindu priests to exorcise the place with certain pujas and rituals to cleanse the place of unexplainable activity. Even though his dad is a dyed-in-the-wool atheist/rationalist with 2 PhDs, he still decided to cover all the bases when weird things began to happen. At first the night was going well. We were having fun, the guys were slowly getting drunk and high, while I stayed sober. It only took a turn for the weird when we heard a noise and upon investigating, realized that someone locked my friend's sister's room while we were all sitting together in the hall. The others were freaking out but I borrowed a set of keys to unlock the door and investigate by myself. Looked at every nook and cranny of the place and didn't find anything suspicious. Called my friend in and he saw nothing was wrong either. We then decided to call the 4 other friends into the room. When we returned a few seconds later, I shit you not, every goddamn shelf, drawer and cupboard in the room, even the ones too high to be reached unless you stand on a chair/are 7 feet tall, had been opened in the brief amount of time we stepped out of the room. By now everyone was pretty terrified and high and having a bad trip, and they kept asking me for reassurance, figuring that I should have a reasonable explanation, being the sober one. I don't, and we all go to my friend's bedroom and decide to pass time by watching anime till the sun comes up. As we were watching an episode of Bleach, one of my friends who was unfamiliar with the show asked, "What's the story about?" Before I casually said, "Oh, it's about gods of death who help souls cross over to the next world," and, before I could finish my sentence, all the taps in the bathroom switched on. The bathroom door was open and in our line of sight, and water gushed forth violently for a few seconds before it switched itself off. Everyone freaked. We didn't sleep a wink and went home at first light. This is where the story ended. But then a week later, when my friend's family returns to town, his older sister, who is mentally challenged and is very childlike, spends all day talking to herself in her room. He doesn't let it bother him till she walks up to him and says, "You had a party here with your friends when we were gone. You were drinking whiskey." When my friend freaked, wondering who told her that, she just replied, "My new friend. I was speaking to him in the room just now." Needless to say, none of us stayed over there again. A friend was visiting me. I fed my cat, put/lock her outside. As we walked upstairs to my room, my cat stood there staring at us. Since then all my friends call her the teleporting cat. Right after the death of my brother, the police were searching his room. He had been only 18 when he didn't wake up, so they assumed that it had something to do with drugs. They looked all over for his cell phone so they could look through his texts, but it was nowhere to be found. They searched the whole upstairs, where his room was, for it, and eventually, they were forced to leave without it. 3 days later, restless, My mom gets up in the middle of the night and is compelled to go upstairs. She finds the light on in me and my sister's room, and goes in to turn it off. There, on the end of my sister's bed, sat one of my brother's pillows, and inside the case sat his missing phone and its charger, neatly wrapped up. My sister couldn't have put it there. We were out at the time we heard the news of his death, and by the time we got home, the police were already searching the house. My mom wouldn't have, either. After finding my brother's body, she ran downstairs to call the police. Not only that, but the door to my room was open. His pillow would have clearly been visible to anyone in his room. And it was obviously his pillow. It matched his sheets, not the bright pink blanket my mom found it on. We're not entirely sure how it got there, or why the phone was off. He always left it on. I sat down on the toilet once at 3 a.m. and the opening music from Star Wars started blaring crystal clear just outside the bathroom window, those wavy glass blocks instead of a regular window. The odd part is that I lived in a fairly rural place and there is no realistic way that someone was outside that window given that our dogs were still sleeping, no car had approached or left after, and there was no sound from the gravel driveway they would have had to walk on to get to that spot. Oh, and also the music was as clear as if I'd heard it in a theater instead of through a tile and glass wall. It stopped after about 5 seconds of sustained music. Never did figure out WTF happened. Weirdest shit of my life. When I was in primary school, I had 2 days that were the biggest déjà vus ever, or something glitched up reality. The second day was a mirror copy of the first, from how my mom woke me up, to the conversations I had with my friends before school, to what we studied in class. For the most part I didn't think about it much and just thought we were rehashing stuff in class and the conversations were on the same topic by chance. But it came to an odd climax during a game we played in class. It was called Shootout, where 5 students line up and the teacher asks a fairly complicated, for a 4th grader, question on any topic. The first person to answer gets to stand back, then it continues until the last 2 people are left and the loser has to sit back down and then a new round begins. On the first day I only got to about the 3rd round and lost, but I still watched with attention to all of the questions and answers. However, the next day I was freaking out with how I knew what the teacher was going to ask me and that no one else noticed it at all. I answered every question right off the bat, even the ones I was standing back for. My teacher told me to give the other kids a chance and I laughed and said that she'd already asked these questions yesterday. She didn't think much of it, but every single question, from the way she asked it to which kids responded with what and when, I knew all of it. I knew of déjà vu back then, but this was just uncanny. I won the game obviously, but I sat down and started asking my friend about how it was odd that no one knew the answers considering that they were the same as yesterday. He was just puzzled and responded that they weren't at all and that I must have just heard them somewhere else. Needless to say, it was very Groundhog Day-esque and scared the shit out of my 9-year-old self. When I was about 8 or 9 I walked into my dad's bedroom where he was watching TV, and the Powerball came up. I yelled out random numbers right before it started and got every single one. In order. Okay, I know this sounds so messed up, and believe me, it is. But I swear to Christ I saw a stick man. I was walking from the gas station to my house. At the time, it was the only place near my house that one could acquire snacks. Next place was Walmart, about 20 miles up the road. It was about an hour walk to and from the gas station, but I didn't mind. I did this every day. I'm about 5 minutes away from my house when I see something dark from the corner of my eyes. I look and at first I don't see anything, so I just look back and keep walking. But I keep seeing it and every time I turn it's gone. I assume it's an eyelash or stray hair, so I stop walking and start rubbing my eyes trying to find hair or whatever. That's when I see the dark thing again, and this time I can clearly make out that it's something in the distance and not hair. I try to make out what it is, cause it's really not looking like anything I've ever seen in my town. It was very long, I'm guessing almost 7 feet, and it was so skinny for its size, probably about as wide as Pringles can. I'm dumbfounded. What is this thing? I keep just staring as it gets closer, and as it does I notice it's somewhat transparent. When it gets closer, by now I'm guessing like 150 feet. I see it looks somewhat human. It has a circle head and long ass arms and legs. And that's when it hits me. It looks like a goddamn stick man. I'm scared as shit but try to think up a logical explanation. I don't get any. When the thing gets like 75 feet from me, it just stops. tilts its head to the side, like it's trying to figure out something. If I can see it? Don't know. When it outstretches an arm I piss myself, literally, and run as fast as I can home, never once looking back. When I got home, I didn't see it, and I stayed locked in my house with my shotgun loaded and pointed at the door for the rest of the day. Slept with the lights on. I've been to the doctors. I came out perfectly healthy and sane. The best the doctors could give me was that I must have been under great stress and imagined it, or I was on drugs. I wasn't on drugs. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't under any type of stress. I wasn't dehydrated or suffer from heat exhaustion. I was and still am perfectly fine. I've never told anyone about it in real life, and the few times I've mentioned this on forums, people either think I'm crazy, on drugs, under enough stress to imagine it. Someone pulled a great prank on me. One mentally ill dude said stickmen are real because they get drawn and imagined so much that over time the energy from our thoughts and imagination has made them real, but most people can't see them. So, what the fuck? I swear this isn't a joke, and it still creeps me out and bugs the shit out of me to this day. Haven't found any information about this anywhere, nor have I heard anyone else seeing the same thing. When I was in my teens and 20s, my, then, boyfriend and I used to go for really long walks at night. They would often last for several hours, roaming the neighborhood streets, and we were regularly able to convince others to join us. On one particular walk, it was just the two of us. We were chatting away when all of a sudden my boyfriend stopped and said, "What the fuck?" or something of that nature. I looked at whatever he was looking at, a landmark of some sort, perhaps a feature in someone's front yard, and realized what he was talking about. I said, "Didn't we just walk past here a few minutes ago?" He said, "Yeah," and for the rest of the walk we were really freaked out about it. We hadn't retraced our steps at all, and this was one of our regular walks. We knew the streets like the backs of our hands, so it wasn't like we just got lost and accidentally ended up in the same place twice on the same walk. It was like our own private glitch in the Matrix, though this was several years before the movie came out. I always used to throw bonfires behind my house back in high school. I would invite over my friends and their girlfriends/boyfriends, and we would all just sit around, chat, enjoy the summer night, and cook hot dogs and s'mores. One night we were all sitting around and I looked down at my phone. It had dialed a random number completely on its own. The other person answered, and so I proceeded to explain to them that it was an accident. The girl said to me, "Wait. Who is this?" So told her, "Oh, this is Finger my annulus." Turns out this girl goes to college with my sister, and furthermore she was at a party with my sister at that very moment. So, I got to say hi to my sister. I have no idea how it happened. I never called the girl before. I had met her before, though. I was watching a streaming movie on one of those sites with audio ads. Irritating as hell. So one time the audio starts up for another round, but instead of an ad it was an old radio play. It was so unexpected I had to pause the movie and listen. It was to do with an insecure girl named Adeline, who doesn't understand why people are laughing, and is afraid they are laughing at her. She has a sense of humor, the narrator noted, and laughs when she knows what other people are laughing about. But what is it that makes her think they might be laughing at her? "Go look in the mirror, Adeline," the narrator said. "Maybe it's something about the way she looks. It describes her hair, says she's neither too fat nor too thin. No, your looks are fine. So why is it that?" And then the play cut off. Walked into a small pub on the outskirts of Oxford with my brother. Empty pub, no answers to our calls. After a few minutes of uncomfortably English loitering, a large white rabbit hopped through the bar and out the door. Still no answers. We left a little freaked and beerless. My story sounds 100% ridiculous. A few months ago I had a lucky coin, a French coin I always carried with me. It was perfect for heads or tails. One day I was at a gas station with my father, and while he paid I stood outside and played heads or tails. I tossed the coin and couldn't dock it. It fell on the ground, bounced up and suddenly just disappeared. I saw it. In midair it disappeared. I searched for nearly half an hour. The gas station is just 3 minutes away from my house, for the coin, but it was nowhere to be found. My father told me that there is the theory that when something falls in the right angle it can switch dimensions. We both don't really believe it, but hey, why not? Like I said, ridiculous. When I was around 5 I had really loved magic. I remember seeing a show where a magician did the famous cup and ball trick. Here is a video of how to do the trick in case you're unfamiliar. One day I really wanted to try it out, so I got 3 little Dixie cups and 3 cotton balls. I have to stress, at the time I had no idea of the mechanics involved. All I knew was that you put a ball underneath the cups and then the balls move around after you say the magic words. So I place a cotton ball on top of one cup and cover it with another to try and make it pass through the cup. Again, I had no idea how the actual trick worked. And it didn't work. Then I remembered I had to say the magic words, a real aha moment for a 5-year-old, so I retried the trick but made it simpler by just covering one cotton ball with a cup. I was going to try and make the cotton ball I had move from cup to cup. Anyway, I say the magic words and then I check under the cup, and to my delight the ball is gone. I was slightly annoyed to discover the cotton ball was not in any of the other cups though. I figured I did something wrong. I tried this 2 more times and both times the cotton ball completely disappeared. I was in the middle of an empty space in the carpet in the living room, so it's not like they were able to roll underneath a couch or something. But I checked underneath anyway. I was pretty upset by how the balls disappeared when that's not part of the trick, and was trying to figure out a rational explanation, rational for a 5-year-old I guess, until I remembered I had said the magic words. Then I figured I must have just used the wrong magic words, and that was that. I went on to play something else. How freaky that moment was didn't bother me until a year or so later when I realized that magic actually has a trick to it. By that time my mom had bought me beginner magic trick sets. My living room and kitchen are basically one long room with a couch by the front door. I was at the back door and my cat was out back. I thought she wanted in, so I opened the sliding door. She didn't, so I closed it and went to sit on the couch. A few minutes later I hear the cat run behind the couch and jump up on the table by the front door because she wants out. There were no open windows and no one else was in the big room. I have no idea how she got in. This happened just the other day. Right here on Reddit, I had heard a modern pop song a couple of times over the course of the week while out at bars, at the mall, and so on. Every environment in which I'd encountered it had boasted so much ambient noise that I couldn't catch any of the lyrics, and I didn't have any idea how to describe the thing to someone in a bid to find out what it was. The song was catchy, though nothing amazing, and I was intrigued, but basically resigned myself to the likelihood that I'd never figure it out unless I stumbled upon it by chance. I never mentioned this matter to anyone, in any medium. 2 days ago, in response to a completely unrelated comment I made in a thread that had nothing whatever to do with anything that would justify it, a Redditor of whom I'd never heard wrote this: "To answer your question," followed by some of the lyrics to the song. Subsequent inquiries as to whether or not he's a wizard were inconclusive. Asparagus farts. Only happened once in my life, but it smelled just like asparagus urine. Really weird. P.S. You need to have a special gene to smell the compound that your body generates from asparagus. Not many people can smell it. P.P.S. Oh. I thought the question was smell event. When I was a kid, I had this huge collection of children's magazines. They had a comic titled Arjun which followed a sci-fi plus Hindu mythology plus action storyline. Some of the issues got lost and I searched everywhere, I mean, literally every fucking where, for them, and I was really sad when they could not be found. Forward 3 to 4 years and one day I see a friend of mine. He couldn't have stolen it, as his family moved into the neighborhood only a year or something ago, sitting in our living room reading one of the missing issues. I asked him where he got it and he was like, "Dude, it was just lying around somewhere here." Never understood what actually happened. For some time I like to believe that a future time-traveling me took it from 4 years back and put it in the day and time. I was walking around with a friend in the middle of the night. We went through one of many creepy alleys, and as she lit up a cigarette, 12 dogs ran across the alley, right in front of us. No noise, just dogs. They jumped the fence of the house to our right, and I guess they just ran right out onto the street. It was weird. This was a huge part of my childhood. Unexplained event happens to my dog. Basically, in middle school, 8th grade, I had a dog, a Lhasa Apso. I had her for about 2 years, and I remember everything about her to this day: her eye color, fur color, behavior, etc. One day, after coming home from school, I took a nap and had a strange dream. It was a dream about my dog falling into a mirror or something of the sort. It didn't seem very long, and I woke up in about an hour. I took my dog on a walk, and later gave her a bath. Usually, I wash my dog in our garage, with the garage door open. I went to work on her, as in, cleaning her, and halfway through, finishing up the soap and about to just rinse her with more water, I looked away. I don't remember why, though I think it was because I smelled some food a few feet away. But then, I felt some movement under my hands, which I thought was my dog shaking herself dry. But no. Right in front of my eyes, was not my white furred dog, it was a cat. This scared my ass off. All of the sudden, I had a cat being washed by me, just standing there and purring. Where the hell did my dog go? I mean, I love cats, now, but I left it there to go searching for my dog. I called her name, and asked a few neighbors if they saw her. Then, I posted lost dog posters everywhere in the neighborhood but not alerted the police, so I came back, and just adopted the cat. I have no idea what happened, to this day. Oh, and I have a phobia of mirrors too now. I was with two friends just after we got off the practice bus. Twilight, we look up at the stars starting to appear and see a shooting star, which then slows down, curves and makes a loop and speeds up again and disappears. Walking around the city at about 2 a.m. with my roommates and some friends. There were probably 7 of us or so. We come to a street which is perpendicular to the one we were walking on. Everything is fairly well lit by street lights, mind you. It is then that we notice a couple buildings in. It's the middle of the night, by the way, a small boy, about 6, and a girl, about 10, in the front yard of a dentist's office on this street, just rage hitting the ground with sticks. No sound coming from this scene, either. Our entire party watched this for a good 5 minutes, just completely befuddled. One roommate speculated that we were watching ghost children. We were too freaked out to do or say anything. It was bizarre. When I was in middle school, my bedroom was in the basement. It was furnished and had a bathroom. The faucet leaked occasionally, so I always made sure to turn it off all the way. But one morning I woke up to find the water full on and overflowing everywhere. I double-checked it the night before. Everyone else was asleep, and no one else used that bathroom. It was just so creepy to see both handles fully on. I still don't get it. There was the one time me and my 2 roommates came home together from having lunch and there was a Coke can in my bathroom. What's so strange? We didn't drink Coke. In fact, we didn't even really have food or drinks at our apartment. We had water. Where did the Coke can come from? We lived in a duplex and were on the 2nd floor. We kept our bathroom window open, but it would be very hard to jump into our bathroom from across the way to our neighbor's balcony. My house has a door code thing for our deadbolt. Knob doesn't lock. One day I was home at 11 a.m. and awake. I work nights so normally asleep. When I heard it beep 4 times, code is 6 digits, and then nothing. When I checked, no one was outside, and the bolt was half unlocked. I didn't sleep much that day. Lost a pack of cigarettes while making out on my so's sister's couch. We thought they might have been knocked off the coffee table by the cat. We turned the apartment upside down and didn't find them. Asked the sister to look for them, and she did, but didn't find them either. We went back a week later and they were right where I left them on the coffee table. It was creepy. I live in a tall, old house, back-to-back terraced house. The master suite is a converted attic room and has a skylight. I, being an adult, decided to get a bunk beds and I sleep directly beneath said skylight. Man next door is fucking nuts. He has recently decided that attracting/feeding/loving all pigeons is his calling, consequently all surrounding rooftops are now covered in pigeons. They had taken to waking me up by sliding down my skylight and generally stomping around on it, treating it like Adventureland. One day at 6 am-ish I hear them dicking about and eyes shut, start slapping my hand on the skylight to frighten them away. I have done this before. It is effective. This time, they all start squawking and fluttering around but not pissing off. I open my eyes, there are feathers all over the skylight, a bloody pigeon leg and blood dripping off my hand. My hand. The window is shut. My window is in fact locked. In the bathroom washing my hand when the old dick from next door goes outside to commence the feed, he starts ranting at his cat. Why'd you kill the nice pigeon Momo? Later on that day I go outside and he's laid it out on his window ledge. It's missing a leg and is scabbed over in dried blood like it's been hit by a car. Recently my family just moved and we were cleaning out the kitchen of the new house we just got to. On the very top shelf of a cabinet I found an old Mega Millions ticket from November 19, 2002. I tell my little sister I'll give her $100 if she can guess the date the ticket is from. What does she guess? Yep. Dead on. There was no possible way she saw the ticket because it was up too high for her to reach, in a cabinet we just opened, and I had it in my pocket when she guessed, from the other room. Even I thought she cheated. She's still expecting $100 she'll never get. Yes. Been waiting for a thread like this. Some time ago a friend and I were in the backyard shooting darts, blowgun, at my dad's square crossbow target. The target had been there for years and I had just got the gun a few weeks prior to us shooting it in the yard that day. Well, my friend shoots a dart and it gets lost in the grass. We can't find it for a solid 30 minutes, so we give up. As it got dark we decided we should go inside. I picked up the crossbow target and underneath it I see a rusty dart with a perfect rust line showing it had been sitting there for quite some time. Thing is that I'm the only one in the family with a dart gun, and that was my first time shooting it at that target. I was soberly driving home early one morning from a friend's place. It was dark out, but there was very clear visibility on the road I was on. So I'm just driving along, not very fast, and I see these two people walking on the sidewalk to my right. I'm in the right-hand lane, and when I was just about to pass them, the one in a red shirt lurches off the sidewalk right in front of my car. I swerve left really hard and slow down, scared half to death. I look in my rear view, my side mirrors, what have you, and both of them are gone. There was a wall next to them, so there was literally nowhere for them to have disappeared to. I was so freaked out I called the friend whose house I had just left so I could calm down. I once came home after a long day of work, part of a long week of work. I went to the toilet, it's Dutch style with a plateau, and there I noticed a turd, entirely unflushed and not even surrounded by any toilet paper. I live entirely on my own, and I think it was my own turd there. It completely freaked the crap out of me. I have gauged ears. One day, a few weeks before my husband and I were moving to another house, I was taking my plugs out before bed, and one went flying and I saw it hit the dresser, bounce twice and go behind it. The dresser is heavy, so I was like, nope, I'll just get it when we move, it's still gonna be there. So I carefully put the other plug in my jewelry box. A few days later I came home from work and went to the bedroom to change. The plug was sitting in the middle of the bed. I balked, quickly checked my jewelry box, other plug still there, grilled husband who had no idea I'd even lost one, and then just popped it back in my ear and thanked the helpful plug finding ghost. I mean, what the hell? Me and my sister came home from school and were eating a snack at the table when we heard what sounded like a giant outside. There was a loud rustle, then boom, a thundering vibration on one side of the house, then boom, one on the other. It sounded just like something stepped over the house and faded off. We just looked at each other, cocked our heads, then freaked out and ran to the window. We lived in a single-story home out in the country and have no idea what it was. We reference it as the Jolly Green Giant. There were no earthquakes or issues with the house. When I was a kid, I once saw a floating white figure hanging just outside of my bedroom door. I remembered it was a woman with long hair too, and she was just floating there. I freaked out but ran past her and into my room anyways. I didn't think much of it either. A few months down the road, my parents bought me this awesome stereo thing that took 5 CDs and had the radio and everything. It even had amazing bass, which is really important to me when it comes to music. At night, I'd listen to some BSB or NSYNC or Spice Girls before bed, but I'd put it on quietly so it wouldn't disturb my sister, who was next door. One night, I was drifting to sleep when I heard the volume knob make click-click noises, so I jerked awake just as my volume went from a 5 to full blast. My parents were on the other side of the house, came to my room and demanded why I'd turned the music on so loud at 2 in the morning. I was scared, but didn't think much of it either. Manufacturer's defect maybe. This happened a few more times, so I stopped listening to music at night. I even turned off the stereo. Some nights it would turn on by itself and play, until I got sick of the annoyances. It still didn't scare me much because I still thought it was just a defect. A couple months after this started, I asked my dad to get me a new one. He managed to exchange my stereo for a different brand one, so I assumed the volume would stop turning itself up. Well, I was wrong. We hooked it up and that exact same night, I heard the click-click noise as I was falling asleep and the volume turned on full blast again. I gave it another chance, that perhaps it was also a manufacturer's defect, but no. It kept happening and this was now on a nightly basis. It scared the living shit out of me and I could never sleep in that room again. To this day, I still don't know if that woman was a ghost or if I had been going crazy or if she was the one turning up the volume. From that experience, I ended up sleeping in my parents' room until I turned 14. I cannot sleep without a nightlight and I have to unplug everything from my wall. Even when I stay over at my so's place, he has to leave his living room light on so that the light shines into his room. From time to time, I'd also have dreams involving the supernatural, and it will only take place in my old room, at my old place. My grandparents wrote a book on all the art concerning Dante's Inferno. I was at their house in Massachusetts visiting for a couple weeks with my parents. They had an enormous property in this valley surrounded by enormous pines. It was really a beautiful place. It just so happened that me and my parents were staying in a guest house at the other end of the property. We each had separate bedrooms, and I had ended staying up late reading this book my grandparents wrote. Out of nowhere I hear this weird laughter, like right outside the window. It kind of sounded like a maniacal redneck, honestly the best description I could think of. I booked it to my parents' room. Of course my dad didn't believe me and ended up staying the night in that room. Saw a UFO once. When I say UFO, I'm going with a literal unidentified flying object because I don't know what I saw and I don't think aliens are dumb enough to fly over rural Illinois. So I'm at a party in college. It's the weekend, dark out, and everybody is outside doing the party thing, drinking beer and talking. I'm in between trips to the keg when I look up from my cigarette and in the sky overhead are 3 orange points of light at each end of a triangle, rotating and moving around rather amorphously. I take a look at the party and other people are seeing it, but nobody is moving or bringing attention to this. I look up and this thing is dropping little points of light like sparks or flares. They go out after a few seconds, and after a few short minutes the UFO drifted out of sight. That's not the weird part. The weird part was how nobody at the party said a word. Not a thing. Everybody moved on and decided not to talk about it at all. I know they saw it. I don't know what it was. But it was weird. The day my brother teleported. Ahem. A friend and I were sitting in the living room playing some game on the GameCube about 4 years ago, quite late at night. One by one, my parents and brothers say their good nights and go to bed. Being so late, we have the sound turned right down and are whispering. A few hours later we hear and see my brother's bedroom door open but he doesn't come out. I figure, oh well, he just wants some fresh air in his room. 10 minutes later, I get up and have to walk past his room to go to the bathroom and see that not only is his door open, his bed is impeccably made and he is completely missing. All the time I get weird feelings of déjà vu. It will feel like I have already seen this thing happen before, but here I am, living it right then and there. It's a creepy feeling. This just happened to me 2 nights ago. I regularly house and dog sit for friends of mine. They live in a big old house, and it's a bit creepy at night. I was lying in bed in one of the bedrooms, just me and the dog in the room, both doors closed tight, and not asleep or dreaming, and suddenly I heard someone knocking on the door. I felt like my blood had turned to ice. It scared me so much. I stopped breathing, but it didn't happen again. Just as I was about to relax, I felt someone gently patting my shoulder, almost as if to comfort me. I freaked out and hid under the covers shaking for an hour, then finally got the nerve to bolt out of the house and drive home to my apartment, called the owners of the house the next day and told them what happened. Apparently, the previous owner of the house before them just died this past weekend, and the room I was in had been his study that he was so fond of. I will never go in that house alone at night again, no matter how benevolent that presence had been. I'm a serious night owl, so a lot of my running around takes place after dark. For many years, I would notice street lights going out around me. It seemed to happen more often when I was upset or excited. A year or 2 ago I learned that street light bulbs expand as they get hot, and have an automatic cutoff switch when they get too hot to prevent them from exploding. They go through this cycle all night long. So if you're out a lot at night you'll see this happen more often than other people would. I feel like there's a similar situation behind a lot of the stories on this thread. It's only unexplainable because you don't have all the information. Well, I have a story to tell that happened to me about a month or 2 ago. It has nothing to do with the supernatural, but I, at least thought it was an interesting experience. I'm starting to wonder if reality just glitched out for a moment because I have no idea what happened. And I have never had an experience like this before or since. It happened one day around 8 or 9 in the morning as I was about to eat breakfast. I was in the kitchen getting a bowl of cereal when, how can I put this, my vision starts getting kind of odd. It started looping? I don't really know how to say it. It was like my vision was a TV trying to tune in on a station. Those of you who are old enough might know what I'm talking about, when a television would have that kind of distortion line going from left to right and the picture cycling from bottom to top. Sorry if that's not clear enough, but I'm not sure what the term for it would be, if there is one. Anyway, as my vision does this, it also flickers to static and back, quickly at first, then going full static. The best example of this that I can give is that one scene from The Ring. Alright, well, after my vision goes to static for about a minute, the static starts to flicker and clear to a different scene, luckily one without a scary ghost girl. No, what I saw was just strange. I was looking at a desert, or at least I think it was a desert anyway. Well, this desert had a few oddities to it that I noticed. First, this desert had a dark violet sky, but I couldn't tell if it was during the day or not because I could only see a few stars. Second, the dirt, or sand, or whatever this place was made of was a really dark brown, kind of like wet dirt. But I think this place was a bit darker than that. Finally, it honestly looked like someone had just drawn a shitty looking desert and pasted it over my vision. The only reason that it didn't look like a drawing was because I could see some of that dark brown sand blowing in the wind, and there were clouds moving up above and blocking the light from the stars when they overlapped. However, that was not the strangest part of this experience. See, after looking at this scene for a minute, I realized a few things about myself, too. For starters, I realized that, not only did I seem to only have one eye, but I also had no peripheral vision. It was like I was looking out of a box because the sides of my vision were black and my field of view, for some strange reason, was a square. Next, I noticed that my eye was pretty close to the ground and my view was kind of crooked, like I had fallen over or was laying down with my head at an angle. I also realized that I couldn't move my eye, not like turning my head, but, for example, I couldn't look in the corners of my vision, I could only stare straight ahead. Finally, I couldn't move. I know this one is kind of cliché, but it wasn't like I was paralyzed. It was like I had no body at all because, hell, I couldn't feel anything. Come to think of it, I couldn't really think either, like I wasn't sentient, like I was just there. Now, this by itself was pretty weird and just a little creepy. However, it just kept getting stranger. You see, after another couple of minutes passed, I started to notice that some kind of greenish light was blinking in the bottom right corner of my vision. I couldn't tell what it was, but it didn't seem like some kind of code or regular light. It had a definite pattern, on, off, like clockwork. Then, the light got bigger and appeared in the center of my vision. No, it was more like it was on my vision, not in it. Finally, something happened that made realize exactly what was going on, but in doing so, made this event incredibly freaky and had me pondering this experience for days. Across my eye, in large, blocky, darkish green letters, "This soldier is dead" was typed, perfectly centered. After this, the same process that brought me there happened in reverse and I was back standing in the kitchen, pouring cereal into a bowl. I think it took around 5 to 10 minutes for this whole thing to transpire because when I got back, my mom was also in the kitchen and was wondering why I was just standing there. Then, I pretty much just ate and went back to working on my homework for my college classes, hoping that I never have to experience being an alien CCTV ever again. Whenever I really want to hear a certain song/musical artist badly enough, it will play somehow, like on the radio, or in a store, etc. It happens all the time, which is convenient for me. Example, I was thinking all day about how I wanted to listen to David Bowie, but I had a long drive and my iPod player and my car was on the fritz. Lo and behold, David Bowie was that night's featured artist on a radio channel I listened to, which meant lots of airplay. One of my mysteries is kinda personal. I had been dating a girl on and off. This is high school, mind you, so dating a month feels like a year, and she died in an ATV accident. Needless to say, I was destroyed. But 4 days later, I think, I got an email from her email talking about future plans to hang out and whatnot. I told a few people, including her best friend, who is one of my best friends, and no one has figured out how that happened, not even her parents who had possession of her electronics. I am a very non-religious, non-spiritual, non-supernatural person. However, I do have a ghost story, or what I think was a ghost, that I cannot explain to this day. When I was little, 8 years old, I was watching cartoons with my sister one morning in the living room. She was about 4 years old at the time. Nobody else was downstairs with us, and all of a sudden we heard a noise coming from the kitchen that got our attention. I don't exactly recall what the noise was, but it was enough to startle both of us enough to turn our heads and look down the hallway. What I saw next I will never forget. There was this gigantic white cloud/wispy thing that was about the size of a full-grown man. It had no features whatsoever other than the fact that it was roughly the size of a human adult. It started moving from the kitchen and bolted down the hallway at a very high speed. It then completely disappeared when it got to the closet door at the end of the hall. I'd say it all happened in the span of 1 to 2 seconds. The scariest part of all of this? My sister still attests to seeing it too, even 13 years after it happened. Any idea what it was? Didn't happen to me, but my mother. My family was taking a vacation to Lake George in New York, and we rented out a cabin for a few days. Our first day there, we were looking around and getting ourselves familiar with the house. My mom sits down on the sofa, feels something under the cushion, and finds one of those small, personalized calculators that have your name on it. It said Shelby, and her name is Shelby. We were all kind of blown away by the timing of it all. I have auditory hallucinations, usually music. It sounds like someone's holding a small little radio right next to my ear. The sound is kind of off, like it's an old-fashioned speaker, kind of tinny. Sometimes it's a song I know, sometimes it's one I don't recognize. It lasts anywhere from a minute to 5 minutes. I've found a few articles online about it, but not much. When I was in junior high, me and my friends were being stupid during lunchtime. Our school sometimes gives us small bags of baby carrots, but we never ate them. One day I had this great, at that time, idea. I took a baby carrot and I aimed it at another table. I then slammed my fist on the carrot and it shot forward, scaring the shit out of the other table. Me and my friends were laughing like crazy. We then decided to see what would happen if we contained the baby carrot in an empty bag of chips. We then slammed the carrot while it was inside said bag, but nothing happened. We opened the bag and it was gone. No hole in the bag and no baby carrot remnants. Till this day I still don't know what happened to that baby carrot. I was sitting with an Ouija board in my lap as I was just casually talking to friends. Playing around, I grabbed the stylus and put it on the board. What happened next is the craziest thing I've ever witnessed, and I still search for an answer to how it happened. I was resting one finger on the stylus and it started moving in perfect figure eights on the board. The boards are only supposed to work with 2 or more people touching it. It did 15 or so perfect figure eights before I freaked out and took my hand off. I am not artistic at all, so there is no way I could ever do this consciously. The way the stylus was moving was extremely creepy too. It was moving in a way that would be impossible for only one point of contact. I had 3 friends in the room who also witnessed it. My friend had told me this happened to him a month before it happened to me. I didn't believe him and thought he was blowing smoke up my ass. When I experienced it, I was in the same room of the house that he was in. I'm not saying this was supernatural, but I haven't found a scientific explanation for what occurred. I've asked Ask Science and they only came up with an explanation that is dependent on 2 people touching the stylus. That explanation can explain how a Ouija board works, but my personal experience discredits this explanation. I had a glass that I had been drinking out of go missing. Fully searched the room I was in to no avail. Woke up the next morning and found it. Had a few instances of similar things happening. It's like your brain can't see it, then it appears somewhere you've already checked multiple times. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.